Today, I have a good one for you. We're gonna do a Photoshop full edit tutorial. And the image that we're gonna use, you guys voted on this image. So thank you so much for all of you that participated. There was 3 different images that I presented to you guys and you all voted on this image. If you guys are new to the channel, in this series, we cover the entire process from frequency separation, dodge and burn, and color grading. So keep in mind that this is an intermediate tutorial. But if you're a beginner, don't worry, I have your back. I already have plenty of beginner level tutorials from dodge and burn, frequency separation, and color grading. So they have their own dedicated videos where I slow down and I cover the entire process. So with that said, you guys know what time it is. It's time to cover todo el pedo. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run my frequency separation, dodge and burn action. I have this new action that I created for 2021 and it combines everything. So literally I just click the background layer, hit the play button, and it's gonna run everything. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I need to first decide what my median is going to be. So I am going to zoom in. And what I wanna look at specifically is the face. I wanna make sure that the color and the texture are separated. So as I increase this number, you'll notice that those blemishes and the texture starts to get removed, but this is a little too much. It's a little overkill. If I bring this number down, you'll see that 7 isn't good enough. I still see these blemishes. I still see those texture. So I'm gonna go 18 here, and 18 looks pretty good. You know what? I might even go up a little bit higher. Let's go 20, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK. So as I was saying earlier, that this new action that I created, when I collapse this down, let me kind of bump this up a little bit. What you'll see is I've already kind of color coded everything. So dodge and burn, frequency separation, everything's all combined into one. So now what I'm gonna do, the first step is I am going to get rid of the texture. And I love doing this with frequency separation. And so I'm gonna go ahead and scroll all the way up and I'm gonna adjust, which is in orange, my contrast. So this is gonna allow me to see the blemishes a little bit better. So I'm gonna scroll down and the first thing I'm gonna do is frequency separation. I'm gonna control the texture and I'm gonna make sure that I'm using the clone stamp. That's just the tool that I prefer. And I'm gonna have it set to current layer. This is very important. And what frequency separation allows me to do is that it allows me to now just select texture and then move this across so that I'm not moving any color as I'm doing this process. And so what you're going to see me do in this process is I'm just using the clone stamp and I'm just holding Alt on the keyboard to select and target similar texture. That's very important. As I'm doing this process is I'm selecting similar texture as I hold Alt because I don't want to grab from an area that has different texture because it's not going to blend properly. Another important step here is to also make sure your hardness, because I'm using texture, I want to make sure that the hardness, we keep that strong texture as I'm brushing. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to speed up this next step. And what you're going to see me do is I'm just going to be brushing over the texture and just blending things off. All right, now that I'm done with the face, I'm going to just click the frequency separation. I marked it in red. I'm just going to click the eyeball on the folder here so you can see the before and after, just removing those blemishes. Let me go ahead and zoom in because I know it's difficult to see on YouTube. So before and then the after. Now, what I'm also going to do is also target these flyaways. Now, since this was a studio shot, the background was pretty smooth, so it's going to be pretty easy to remove some of these flyaways. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and target next. I'm going to also use the same technique, which is using the clone stamp, holding Alt, sampling the background, and then fixing those flyaways. So here what you're gonna notice, as I was trying to remove the hair, I got this blotch of color. To fix that, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to the color backup layer. I'm gonna make sure I have the mixer brush. And all I'm gonna do now, because this is only targeting the color, I'm not gonna be moving any texture. I can just push and grab this color and blend that off. So I'm gonna push this in a little bit as well. And that should fix it. So if we look, let's take a look at the hair. I'm gonna go ahead and just do frequency separation, before and then the after. And let's take a look on this side of the hair, before and then the after. So now that I'm already removed the flyaways, I've already removed the blemishes, now I'm gonna go in with the color on frequency separation and blend in the color just a little bit better for the skin. So I'm gonna go to my color backup. And now I'm gonna come all the way back up to my assist, and this is gonna allow me to see the areas maybe that need to be transitioned off a little bit better. So it's very important to adjust this curve. And I'm actually gonna change the blend mode to multiply. So multiply sometimes does a better job than normal. And let me see if it does. And I like that. Now keep in mind the blend mode is gonna be dependent on your monitor. Everybody's monitor is a little bit different. I'm using a BenQ monitor, which I love. I can't edit an image without it. My eyes have just got used to always using this monitor. So all I'm simply doing here is I'm just kind of blending off these transitions. I'm not trying to make it perfect. I would rather do it honestly with dodge and burn, but I'm just doing this to speed up the dodge and burn process, because nowadays I don't want to spend a lot of time doing dodge and burn. So this is just going to speed it up ever so slightly so that I don't have to waste so much time doing dodge and burn. So I'm going to go ahead and just blend this off. And then in an area like right here, I'm going to use the lasso tool, and I'm just going to make a selection all around here. I just want to blend this whole color because I'm on the color layer. I'm just going to blend this. It's not going to affect the texture at all. I'm going to make sure my feather is around 15. I think that's a good number. And I'm going to go to blur, and then I'm going to go to Gaussian blur. And I just want to blend this color together a little bit more. So I think around 19, if I hit the before and then the after, you'll see that it kind of filled in that color. So to even it out a little bit. So I'm going to hit OK there. And we'll do the same thing a little bit right here. Filter Gaussian. And maybe we'll do a little bit on the forehead because I see some inconsistencies there as well. And I think for now, all these little areas, it's gonna be easier with dodge and burn. One last thing before I get into dodge and burn, I'm gonna switch it back to normal. And let me see if normal will show anything that I might have missed. And I think right here, I think I'm gonna blend it off. So I'm actually gonna come back to the color. And I'm gonna use the lasso tool one more time here. And I'm gonna blend that off, okay? So keep in mind that this is not gonna be perfect. Dodge and burn is king when it comes to skin retouching. So this is the before and then the after. So this is what I've done with just frequency separation, kind of setting up the base for the most important part, which is gonna be my dodge and burn. So before and the after. Now that we're done with frequency separation, dodge and burn is, in my opinion, the most important process in the entire editing process, because I want to have the skin looking nice and good before I start color grading. So let's get to dodge and burn. So dodge and burn is going to be in the blue section. And if I go to dodge, now what I want to do is I want to start lightening up certain pixels in the image. So I'm going to adjust my assist layer once again. And I'm gonna make sure that I can see the areas that need to be blended off. So typically I like to start off in the forehead, then I'll go to the left side of the face, especially right here on the cheek, and then right here on the right side, and then I'll go down here below on the chin. And so throughout this process, you're gonna see me adjusting that helper layer for each specific section because they're at different tonal levels. And I can't just leave my contrast assist layer the same for each section. So I'm probably going to fast forward most of this part, but I do have a dedicated dodge and burn tutorial if you guys want to watch that. So let me go ahead and start off. So I'll start off so you guys can see at least a part of the process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get the brush tool. We're going to set it to white. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a brush called Todo el Pedo, ALV, Dodge and Burn. And what I'm going to do is I am going to simply just start blending off some of these little areas. And it's very important that I'm using a tablet. If you are not using a tablet, you're doing yourself a disservice because it is going to take a lot longer. It's not to say that you can't do it without a mouse, but man, it's going to take a lot longer. All right. So if you're using a mouse, it's going to take a lot longer than you not using a tablet. So I highly recommend using a tablet. And one of the crucial steps throughout this process is to make sure that you're not zooming in too much. I've said this numerous times in these tutorials. One of my biggest mistakes was zooming in too much. And then I was over doing it with the dodge and the burn. So far, I just did a little bit so far, and this is the before and then the after. So you'll see that I'm just kind of blending those things off. I can also hold Alt on the little layer mask and it'll show me where I've started blending things off so far. So I'm actually going to go to my assist layer. I feel like I need to blend it a little bit more, or adjust it, I should say, just so that I can see more of the areas that need to be adjusted. So right about here, that really made some things come out so that I can start making the adjustments. So I'm going to start brushing this off. And that's all I'm going to do throughout this process. Now, I wish there was a shortcut to learning dodge and burn, and there isn't. I know right now there's a lot of new software coming out, the new AI that's saying that it will make the skin look good. In my opinion, as of right now, dodge and burn, just doing it manually, is going to be the best route. And a lot of it is just going to take practice, unfortunately. It's not the sexiest answer. Most people just want to get nice results. It's going to take a long time to get used to this process. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward the part. I'll be giving some tips throughout the process. So now is the time to take a look at what I've done just on the forehead. I'm going to go ahead and hit the blue folder. So this is the before and then the after. Let's take off the assist layers. So before and then the after, just subtly blending off some of these transitions. I'm going to go ahead and continue. Now I'm going to focus on the left side now. We'll move to the right side and so forth. Throughout this process, you're going to see me adjust the brush, small to large, depending on the specific area that I'm working on. So let's take a look at the left side now as I'm working on it, before and after. And I have to emphasize, guys, that each specific area, you're going to be changing the blend mode of your helper layer and also adjusting that curve to the specific area. And let's take a look at what I've done so far. So this is, let me zoom in, make sure we can See a little bit better right about there. Let's do the before and then the after. Zoom out a little bit more. Before and after. Turn on the contrast layer. Sometimes having the black and white will allow you guys to see the adjustments a little bit better. Let me just bring this down right about there. And this is, once again, before and then the after. So I'm pretty much almost done with the dodge and burn. I'm just going to go in, just kind of tweak a couple more things, and then we're ready to move on to the color grading. So that pretty much does it for the dodge and burn. Now, silly me, I said we're going to get into the color grading. I completely forgot. We got to get to also the global dodge and burn. So let's quickly go over the global and the global burn. Now, this is going to allow us to make the image appear more three-dimensional. So what I'm going to do is I have some actions here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my global. This is going to allow me to see where I should be adding the brightness levels. I'm also going to add a separate curves for dodge and a separate curves for my burn. So I'm going to rename these. I'm going to name this global so we can stay nice and organized, and burn global. Okay. Now, when I do this, I'm going to go to my global check. I'm going to adjust this. Now this is going to show me the levels on where I should be brightening up. So right here, this shows me where the light was hitting for the most part on the nose, this little cheekbone here, right on top of the lips, and a little bit of the lips, and on the chin. We'll get a little bit on the hair. So this kind of gives me a general starting point. So I'm going to go to my global dodge. I'm going to go to my brush tool. I'm going to set it this time to about 4% flow. And I'm going to take this off. So this general area here, actually, you know what? I'll leave it on. And so this general area, we'll get a couple of dabs right about there. It should get a little bit of a section here, here. I'm going to go a little bit there, there, boom, boom. A little bit on this section, a little bit on the chin. Let me take it off real quick so I can see what I'm doing so far. So far, it's looking good. I know that this area should have a little bit more. So I'm going to add a little bit of brightness levels here and here. We also know that the nose should be getting brighter. A little bit more brightness there. Let me zoom in. Sorry, I zoomed out there. I'm going to add a little bit here. Also going to add a little bit to the lips as well, especially on the bottom part, because that's where the light was hitting it. It's just going to add a little bit of volume to it. And then once again, right here below the chin. So if I hold Alt here, you'll see that this is what I achieved, right, on the global. So before and then the after. So let's see, without the assist, what this is doing here. So if I go here, this is before and then the after. It's looking good so far. And now we're going to get into the global burn. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for areas that should have these natural shadows. So here's going to be a spot here, right below the cheeks, and right up here on the forehead. So I'm going to hit the brush tool, and I'm going to have a big brush because I want to blend this in nice and soft. So I'm going to just blend this in. Right here, we should have a nice shadow right there. So I'm just blending this off. And I'm going to put more emphasis on this area here. And I'm going to blend it off. So it's important, at least when I do this, to have a big brush so it blends in just a little bit easier. All right. I'm going to do underneath here. We're going to get the side of the nose. Right on top of the eye here, maybe a little bit on top of the forehead. And then we'll get a little bit underneath the chin here. And the last part is going back to the dodge global. And I do want to add, I'm going to increase this to maybe about 7. I do want to increase the brightness of the hair right about here. And I'm trying to target the areas that are already bright. I don't necessarily want to brighten up areas that are dark. Now I'm going to go to the global burn. I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to darken up the parts of the hair that are already dark. Let's actually go inside the hand here as well. And I'm going to add a little bit of global to these little specular spots on the jacket. So I'm just coming around here. We're just doing this nice and quick right there. And let me add a little bit more down there. Perfect. So let's take a look at the global dodge. So this is the before, before, and then the after. And then the global burn, this is the before and then the after. If I hold Alt, let's take a look at everything so you can get an idea where I did the global burn. Alt, global burn, global dodge. This is the dodge that we did at the beginning. And this is the burn. All right. Now, before we move on, we're also going to get into the curves. So I have a specific curves that I'm going to use and that I love for the eyes. So I'm going to run my curves. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the brush tool. And I'm going to set this to, let's go 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to brighten up the catch light and right underneath the eye. This is where I want the brightness to show up. I'm going to increase the brightness on the actual eye as well. So I'm going to brighten up the whole thing, and then we're going to brighten it up just right there. So let's take a look at how the eye, we made it pop there. Very cool. I'm going to come to the opposite, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm just brushing in this brightness where I want. And I'm also going to add just a little bit of brightness on this little areas that are a little bit specular right there. Awesome. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to look at the before and after. Sometimes if I overdo it here, I can just lower the opacity. So I'm going to lower it down just to be safe. I'm also going to lower down my global just in case I went too far. And let's go about 80 to play it safe. And now we are officially ready for the color grading. Now we're going to get into the color grading. I'm going to collapse the frequency separation and dodge and burn folder so we stay nice and organized. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start off with the adjustment layer using the selective color. Now, the first ones I'm going to target are obviously the reds and the yellows because that's where the skin tone is located. So the numbers that I used here, I'm going to enter them really quick, is -5, 1, and 7, and then 3 at the bottom. So obviously the only real reds that are targeted here is the skin tone because the background is that little turquoise teal color. And you'll see a small adjustment. And let me zoom in, because if I don't zoom in, somebody is going to roast me in the comments telling me that I didn't zoom in. So there we go. It's just a subtle difference. I'm not trying to go here and act all cute and show off and say, hey, look at all this color I added. It's just subtle adjustments. And to be honest, it might be difficult to see on YouTube because of the compression. So keep that in mind. I have a big screen BenQ monitor meant for editing, so I can see these subtle changes. So it might be very difficult for you to see. So I'm going to go into the neutrals now, and then the blacks. All I did is I added the -1. So the main emphasis here was the yellows and the reds. And I have to tell you guys that there are no magic numbers that I can give you and say, hey, this is always going to work. These numbers are very specific to this image that I'm working with here. You have to experiment yourself and find the numbers that are going to work best for your scene, because if you're shooting natural light, it's going to be different. If you're shooting high speed sync in golden hour, it's going to be different. If you're shooting during blue hour, you're shooting during nighttime. So understand that the only way you're going to get results is by experimenting and playing around with the options in the selective color. So I'm gonna hit the eyeball here. So before and after, once again, very, very subtle difference, but it added that nice little color into the skin. So I'm gonna go ahead and zoom out here. And then the next one that I'm going to use is a new action that I have. Where is it? The color balance midtones. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run this action. And by the way, I just released these new actions. By the time you guys are watching this video, I should already have them for sale if you guys are interested. Those of you that purchased my old actions, thank you guys so much. Some of you even reached out to me and said, hey, Eli, I didn't even need the actions. I just bought them to support you. And I thank you guys so much. But these new actions I did release. So what this one does is that it makes a selection of just these skin tones. If I hold Alt here, you'll see that the areas in white are the areas that I'm going to target. So that's really cool. So if I zoom in here and we go into the properties, as I'm color grading, it's really going to put more emphasis on the skin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the mids, and I'm actually going to add the teal. I'm going to go -4. And then I'm also going to go down on the yellows, and we're going to add a little bit of emphasis on the blues. I'm going to go to the highlights, and I'm going to add 1 and then +2 on the blues. So once again, it's just a very subtle difference. It's probably going to be very difficult to see once again on the monitor, but it's just a subtle difference to kind of tone down some of the yellows on there. So now that I have that set up, I'm also going to use a gradient map that I have here. Now, those of you that are wondering like, oh, what is this gradient map? It's just a simple gradient map. I just changed the blend mode to soft light, and this is the color that I used here. And I love using this one for skin tone. But one of the problems, as you can see, is that it does it to the overall image. And I don't want that. I want to use the same layer mask that I had for the color balance here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that over. So I'm going to hold Alt and I'm going to drag that up. And now that color grade that I added on the gradient map, if I hold Alt here, has been more emphasized on these areas that are white. All right. So if I hit the before and after, you'll see that the skin gets this nice, beautiful glow. Now I am going to tone it down a little bit. We're going to go to about 40% on the opacity. Now that I've added just a little bit of color grading, I'm going to adjust the exposure with the curves. So I'm going to add a curves adjustment layer. And I'm going to use the little hand tool here. And I'm going to aim for the forehead right about here. And I'm just going to raise up the exposure ever so slightly right about there. So if I hit this little eyeball before and after, it just adds a little bit of emphasis to the exposure on the skin. I'm going to tone it down just a little bit. And then maybe on the blues, let me see if I click. And I'm actually going to move it up just a little bit to really add a little bit of emphasis to the blues. So now I'm going to go into the raw Vato Loco, and I already have a preset saved just to save some time here. I can't go through all the settings because then it's just going to take forever. I'm pretty sure this tutorial is already at the 30-minute mark at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the raw Vato Loco. And if you don't know what that does, it just merges everything into a smart filter. It has this camera raw filter already built in. So one of my favorite actions. And now I'm going to go here into presets, user presets, and then I have it saved. It should be called Celeste YouTube. There we go. And let's take a look at what I did real quick. So I added exposure up to 10, negative on the contrast, clarity on 2. Didn't do anything to the curves there. Sharpening, I brought it up to 74. I think I'll probably tone it down now. So let's go maybe about 67 will be fine. Let's go to the HSL, luminance. Got the oranges and the reds, aquas 1, blues. -4 on the aquas, and then the hue brought the aquas to 5 there. Color grading, let's see, shadows. We added some reds. Highlights, we added some blues or teals. Added grain on this image, 15. And then of course, we came in here on the calibration and we added some of the blue primaries. I'm actually going to see what it looks like if I increase this now to 24. Don't like that. So I'm actually going to go back. I'm going to put 3 here. Okay. So sometimes when I look at an image for the second time and I'm editing, sometimes I look back and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have added this. Maybe I should tweak this. Like the contrast here, I'm gonna see if I increase the contrast. I'm actually gonna increase it this time. I had it at -3. I'm actually gonna go to +3. I'm gonna actually go and hit OK now. And now let's see what that did. So before camera raw and then after, before and then the after. So of course, as you're editing, you guys can tweak the steps to what you guys like. The way I edit my images, you might agree or disagree. It's totally fine. So now we're on to the last couple of steps here. So for this next step, I'm gonna add just a little bit more depth to the image. So I'm gonna go to my red loom action. I'm gonna push play here. And what this is gonna do is gonna kind of deepen the shadows and then brighten the highlights just ever so slightly. And what I wanna do is I need to decide what opacity do I feel that looks best. So what I can do is I can come here to the opacity and I can lower it down if I feel like I need to. In this case, I started off at 70. I'm gonna go to 60. So this is the before and then the after. Now I definitely wanna zoom in here. And before and after. So just kind of just making the shadows a little bit richer, highlights just a little bit richer. So we're gonna go ahead now and zoom out. And then one of the last steps, and this is gonna be optional here, is I'm going to add a levels adjustment. And I'm gonna look at my histogram and I'm gonna decide, do I need to add a little bit more highlights? Which in this case, I do. I do like that I'm bringing it in. I don't wanna bring it in too much, okay? But it does look a little bit flat, so I wanna bring it up right about to 246. And then here I can look at my shadows and I want to darken them up ever so slightly. So if I go here, hit the eyeball, this is the before and the after. And that concludes the final results. Let's take a look at the before and after. So I'm gonna come all the way down to the background layer. I'm gonna hold Alt on the keyboard. So before and then the after. Before and then the after. Now, if I zoom out, let's take a look at the overall composition. Before and the after. Now, one other step that I might do, which I'm not going to do right now, is add another 50% gray layer and double check my dodge and burn. Now that I've added the color grading, I've made some adjustments in camera raw, maybe some inconsistencies showed up. So I might go back and do the dodge and burn and tweak just small little areas that maybe came out because of the color grading. And that concludes the tutorial. Thank you guys so much for watching. Now, if you guys watched this entire video, I truly appreciate it. And the first 3 people that leave a comment that you saw the whole video, I will give you my Photoshop new actions for free. So only the first 3 people. After that, sorry people. But don't forget to follow me on Instagram if you guys love this tutorial and you want to see how I took this photograph. All my behind the scenes content is on Instagram, so you don't want to miss it. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out.